Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the third and final day of the Rapid portion of the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Team Championship being held here in London. Now, before we jump into all the action, I want to give a big shout out specifically to those of you guys watching these YouTube videos, very specifically from the great city of London. I have been recognized an innumerable amount of times, both in and around the Hammersmith station, also at the South Kensington station. So I want to give a big shout out to you guys. But today I met a very special fan when I was at the restaurant Wasabi getting my lunch. So I do want to give a big shout out to Rafi. I did say that I would mention his name during this video, so I figured I might as well get it out of the way here at the start. Now, we are going to be covering the games, but I do want to also point out that it is really nice. I was about to say annoying, actually, for some reason. It's really nice that there's so many people who are big fans of the game of chess. It really does make me feel good about everything that I do. So I once again want to thank you guys, the fans out there, for all the inspiration you've provided me with over the past couple of days, but just in general, whenever I am out and about on the tube or in the great city of London. Now, I know it's a little bit long-winded, so we will get right into action, but I did feel it was very important to recognize those of you guys who have made all this possible. So, without further ado, we're going to jump into the action. We're in the first round. This is round number 9 of 12 rounds. Remember, I took the final round of the first day off, so I had played all except for that one game, and today we start with the white pieces against Jules Moussard. Now, Jules Moussard, very strong player from France, rated about 2650 in classical chess, someone not to be underestimated. So I open with the move knight f3. We get knight f6, g3, d5, bishop g2, and now we have the move e6. Here I castle, bishop e7, and I decide to play the move d3. Now, I could, of course, play the move d4 with the idea of playing castles and c4 going into the classic Catalan opening, but for this game, considering that it's rapid, I want to play something very slow. I want to put my knight on d2 and then angle to play either c4 or e4. So we get castles. I go knight d2, we get a5, and now I play the move a4. Now, you might remember that this King's Indian attack style opening is something I played in the Chess Champions Tour a couple of weeks ago when I first came to Europe on this long trip. I had this position against Nepo after knight c6 and d4, and the reason this is important to note is that after a5, a4 is played, Moussard plays the move knight c6. Now, here I play the move d4, the main reason being that if I were to play a move like e4 here, black can simply take on e4 and play the move e5 here. The pawns are mirroring each other. It's a very stable position. Generally, black should be completely fine. So, I decide to play the move d4. Now, this is important because if I don't play e4, d4 is pretty much the only move that makes sense here. Say I were to play a move like rook e1 after e5, suddenly we have the big black center, the two pawns guarded by d's knights, and black is much better. So, I play d4. Stopping e5, we get the move b6, and now I play the move c3, reinforcing the pawn on d4. We get the move knight to b8, and now I play the move b3. We got c5, I play c4, knight c6, bishop b2, bishop b7, and suddenly we have a situation where there are a lot of pawns that are contesting all these critical squares here. That being said, due to the symmetrical nature of the pawn structure here for both sides, the pawns mirroring each other, neither side really has an advantage. So I go e3 to reinforce the pawn on d4, we get knight b4, and now I play the move queen e2. Here we got the move rook c8, and now I play the move rook to c1, and in this position, Jules plays queen c7. I take on c5 here, and this is probably a wrong decision. Now, in this position, I probably should have played the move rook fd1, rook fd8, and then something like knight to e5, keeping the tension in the center where all the pawn trades are available for both sides, but ultimately, I blink first, and I take on c5. We get pawn takes pawn, I play knight e5, rook d8, rook d1, and now we get the move h6. Now, you will notice that at this point in the game, I'm up nearly 4.5 minutes on the clock. This would be a very good time to start pressing if there were easy moves available, but there's a lot going on here. The queen is always spying the knight, I have to worry about d4, and additionally, it's not really clear where my pieces should be. Now, originally, I wanted to play the move knight to d3, trying to get rid of this really nice bastion knight here on b4, but I was actually worried about takes, and this move pawn to d4 here, where after I trade the bishops here, if I were to take and take what looks like a free pawn, there's e5, and it's uh-oh spaghetti-o time. I'll lose the bishop or the queen behind it. So if I were to play this and play something like queen to e2, d3, black is doing very well here after queen to f1, and a move like queen b6 or bishop c5 ideas. There's a lot of pressure towards the pawn, and this is just not what you want. So I decided to play the move h4 here in this position. Perhaps, sorry, rook d1, h6. Here, I maybe should have played the move knight b1, but I was actually very concerned about something like bishop d6, knight to a2 as well, and even bishop to a6 here. So I wasn't sure if it made sense to retreat the knight. But I probably should play this move because I have ideas. Let's just say black was bishop f8, of knight to a3, and suddenly I get my own bastion knight on b5 here. So the knights sort of offset each other. So I play h4. Now we get the move bishop d6. I play knight g4. We get takes, takes. And here Jules plays the move bishop to e5. Now this is an important move, of course, because if black were to play, say, pawn takes pawn, queen takes g7 would be the classic AA battery checkmate of the black king on g8. So we get bishop to e5. I trade the bishops, and now I take on d5. And here I play the move knight to f3. We get queen to b2, and now I play the move rook b1, queen f6, and here I play the move knight e1. Now, this is simply a terrible move by me, but I did not want to get too low on time in this situation. What I probably should have played was the move queen to f4, and after takes, takes, and say black goes c4 here, I can play a move like bishop h3, rook to b8, and now after knight d4, I have this great bastion knight here. Black is still maybe slightly better, but it's nothing conclusive. Instead, I go knight to e1, sort of panicking a little bit, and now we get the move bishop to a6, an excellent move from Jules because now there are no threats on the diagonal. This bishop has moved away. This bishop can start to spy some of the squares on this diagonal, but additionally, black is now free to push either c4 or d4 on the next turn. So I go bishop f1. We get takes, takes, d4 played here, and this is a move that I actually missed. In the position, I was much more concerned about this move c4, and I thought here with black pushing this p, the c pawn going up the board, I was not really sure how I was going to defend. So we get d4. I take, we get takes, and now I play the move rook d2. We get d3, pass pawn, might as well push it, the knight and the rook guard it, and here I play the move queen f3. Now at this point what I'm trying to do is move very quickly because I know I'm in a lot of trouble here with this pass pawn, so what my best hope in this situation is to get my opponent low on time, and then maybe he'll make a mistake. So I go queen f3, we get queen e6, and now I play king g1, we get the move rook c3, and here I play the move knight g2. Now, when I go knight g2, what I'm hoping for is to get this knight to either f4 or to f4 and h5 to pressure the pawn, or to get the knight to e3 and f5. One of these two squares will be vital for the knight to create any counterplay. So here we get rook takes pawn. I play rook c1, and now we get the move queen to d5. I go queen g4, and here we have the move queen d7. Now it's worth pointing out that if Moussard were to play the move knight c2 here in this position with the knight rerouting to d4, where there are all kinds of forks available, I probably would have lost this game. But he goes queen d7. I play queen f4, he takes the pawn, and this move is still very good, but objectively, I think this is a start of letting me get some counterplay when Moussard takes the pawn. Probably, again, knight to c6 with the idea of knight to d4 would have been very strong, because after takes and knight e3, while black is still much better, after queen d7 and knight to f5, here comes the knight is starting to target the pawns, or ideas like queen e5 and queen g4, and with only 50 seconds on the clock, even with the 10-second increment, it's very hard to play. So Moussard plays queen to e6. Now this move is a mistake. Black is still better after this move, but once you go queen e6, overlooking this move knight to d4, forking the queen and the rook here, suddenly it's very tough to play. Now, when you get low on time, you make a blunder. Generally, it's very hard to keep that same motivation, same objectivity, because you know you've messed it up, and Moussard starts to fall apart very quickly. He goes queen d5, I take, he takes, and now I play the move queen c7, attacking the rook and the pawn. Here we get to move queen to d5. This is a mistake. Rook to a8 probably would have been the best move, trying to guard the pawn here. It's understandable that Moussard was probably worried about something like queen b7, followed by rook c7 or rook c8 here, so he plays queen d5. But now I go rook c5, and suddenly the queen and the rook are going to win this pawn, and if I win this pawn on a5 here, you'll notice that this knight is currently very strong on b4, guarded by the pawn. If I can win this pawn on a5, now the knight is a permanent weakness, meaning that if the knight has to move, this pawn on d3 may no longer be safe. So Moussard goes rook e8, I play rook to c1, we get g6, and now I play the move queen c5. We get queen to e4, and here I play queen c4, offering the trade of the queens. Now, if black had this pawn on a5, black would gladly trade because the pawn would anchor the horse, but as you will notice, without this pawn here guarding the knight, this knight is now on pre, the knight guards the pawn, and this is simply very tough to play. So we get h5. I play the move king h2, and here Moussard plays king g7. Now I play queen c3, king g8, and here I go rook to b1, attacking the horse and trying to win this pawn on d3. Moussard plays knight c6, and now I go queen takes d3, and at this point, we have reached an endgame where both sides have 3 pawns on the king side, but with the 2 towers versus the rook and the knight, I should be able to win. Now, one interesting fact about this position, if we go forward a few moves here, is that I actually had this exact endgame in the 2019 FIDE Grand Prix event held in Moscow, Russia against Daniil Dubov in my tiebreaker match. I only needed a draw in the final game, so I was not able to win with the 2 rooks versus the rook and the knight, but Dubov did use this exact setup where he would put this knight on h6 trying to guard the g4 square. So we get this position after knight to h6, and I will point out one of the great things about having played this position before is that even though I know this should be very good for me, I know it's not super easy because of that experience. So I play the move g4 here. Now after I play g4, Moussard trades the pawns on g4, and now he goes for the move rook b7. Here I play rook e5, we get some dilly-dallying all over the place. I start shuffling the rooks quite a bit before I finally come up with a plan. Now, one of the reasons I'm moving so quickly here versus looking for a plan is that you can try to build up a little bit of time before you make the critical decision. And for me here, every 10 seconds that I can add means more time to think at a later junction in the game. So I play a few more waiting moves, and finally I go for g5, we get knight f5, and here I play the move king g4. Now, the reason it's so important to be precise here with the right pawn push is that, for example, if black could get this position with the knight on g7, something like this, and the rook on b7, this might still be winning somehow for white, but it's going to be very, very hard to play because this knight on h5 is stuck forever. So I have to be very careful. Now, the goal here, what I want to do when I play g5, king g4, is to play h5, force a trade of the pawns, or attack this pawn on f7. Now, I know this is a very advanced concept. I understand most people won't understand it, but I still will try to explain it. So here we get knight to d6. Now I play rook f6, we get knight e8, and here I go rook to c6. Now, objectively, Moussard here probably should have just waited with knight to e7, and after rook a7, played knight back to f5. Because here, eventually, after rook a4 and knight e7, it's not completely clear how I'm going to force h5 or win this pawn on f7. Again, he's very low on the clock, as you can see, so it's difficult to play. But nonetheless, he finally makes a mistake. So we get this position with rook c6. The knight is now glued here on e8. There are no squares available to jump to, and we get the move rook d5. I go rook to a7, we get rook d4, king h3, and now we have the move rook e4. Now in this position, I inexplicably play this move h5, and this is a huge blunder by me, and this violates all the basic rules. In this position, the knight is completely stuck on e8, meaning that I can play 5 or 6 quick moves here, a move like rook to d7, and then come up with a plan versus forcing it. But instead, I play h5 because I mistakenly think here that after takes and g6, this position is winning with these rooks. Now, it is not winning because after rook to f4 guarding the pawn, I play rook to e7, and here Moussard plays knight f6. I take the pawn, and in this position, Moussard plays the move knight to d5 with 2 seconds left, throwing away the draw. Now, the way to draw this game, the cleanest one, is to go knight g4 here, where there's a bastion, the pawn guards the knight, and the rook targets the pawn. After I play with like rook c7, black can go knight to h6, attacking the pawn with the knight and the rook, and after queen takes and rook h7, knight to f7, the game will continue after rook h5 and king g7, but objectively, with 2 rooks versus a rook and knight, and no pawns on the board, this should be a draw. But Moussard plays knight to d5 instead. This is a blunder because now I go rook to d7, attacking the pony. We get knight f6, and here I play the move rook to a7. Now, the big problem for black here is that now if you play the move knight to g4 in this position, actually, let's compare 1 second. If you look at this position right back here with knight g4 here. If white queens the pawn, black takes, and the rook is under attack on e7, so if I go rook c8, I lose the rook and the game, versus the game here where after rook to a7, now wherever black moves the knight, say g4, when I promote the pawn and black takes, I have rook c8, creating the classic ladder checkmate here. The king gets stuck on f8, there are no squares available, and is GG on the spot. So after rook to a7, black is simply lost here because the threat of promoting the pawn and playing rook c8 is simply too much. You can't move the knight. Moussard checks. I go king h4. He checks. If he were to play rook f5, which is another option, I simply go rook to c8 here, threatening to promote the pawn. And if black moves the knight, I queen because here it's a double check. The rook and the queen both check the black king. So Moussard plays rook f4, I go king g5, he plays rook f1, and here I promote to a bishop. Now, I would have loved to have under-promoted to a third rook here, but unfortunately, I couldn't do this because there was not a rook on the board at all. If there was a third rook, I would have promoted, but without being able to find a rook, due to the fact that I had both my rooks on the board at this point, I decided to under-promote to a bishop, checking the king. Moussard takes, and after rook takes f6, he resigns the game because after takes, I will simply clean up, win this last pawn, and then it's a very simple technical win with a king and rook versus a king. So a very shaky first game of the day, but a very important game because when I won this game, this meant that my team, the WR chess team, won this match by a score of 3.5 to 2.5, meaning that I was the big hero of the match. So, I get a win in the first game of the day, and now we are going to move to the second game where I once again have the white pieces. Now, you're probably noticing that I've had a lot of white games in this tournament, and the main reason for that is that one of our players, Jan-Krzysztof Duda, has lost 3 games in a row at this point, and so he simply needed a break. So I get white in the second game of the day against the Hungarian Grandmaster Viktor Erdos. Now, I might be fact-checking incorrectly, but I remember playing Viktor Erdos in the World Youth Chess Championship all the way back, I believe, in the year 2000. It could have been 99 or 2001. I'm not actually sure because I didn't do my research before this recap. But I played him 25 years ago in a youth tournament. And in that game with the black pieces, I would lose in a King's Indian, meaning that I would not win the gold medal in that youth tournament. Now, amazingly, I do not believe that I have played Viktor Erdos over the board since that fateful game 25 years ago, so it's a chance to get a little bit of revenge. Now, Erdos has gone on to become a grandmaster like me, not quite at the same level, but still very, very formidable. So I have white in the second game of the day, and I open with the move e4. We get c5, knight f3, d6, I play bishop b5, checking the king, knight c6 castles, and we get the move bishop d7. Here I play rook e1, knight to f6, c3, and now Erdos plays the move a6. Here I go bishop to f1, and now we get the move bishop g4, and in this position, I play the move h3. Now, you will remember I had this against Fabiano. I believe Fabiano played the other order with a6, bishop f1 right away here, if I'm not mistaken, in Norway chess, but here we finally get a different variation where I'm able to play the move h3 instead of going for this line with d4 and e5. So, I play h3. We get the move bishop takes f3. Here I take with the queen, and now we get the move g6. I play d3, bishop g7, and here I play the move bishop e3. We get castles, knight d2, e6, and I play the move queen d1. Now, in this position, white is supposed to be a little bit better due to having the 2 bishops here and the ideas of building a big white center, but black is definitely in the game. So we get rook c8. I play a4 here, we get knight d7, and now I play the move knight f3. We get knight to e5, I go knight to h2, queen c7, and now I play the move f4, kicking the knight back and playing knight to f3. Now at this point, you'll notice that I have a little bit more space in the center with the 2 b's here, so it's looking pretty good, but there's a long way to go. We get rook d8, I play bishop f2, knight e7, and now I play the move g4, pushing my p and further trying to restrict these knights from the central squares altogether. We get the move knight to f6, I play a5, knight c6, and now I go queen a4. Now the reason that I play a5 is that if black were able to play b5 here and go knight d7, you will notice that after b4, suddenly black has this great diagonal for this bishop, and black is putting some pressure on the white pawns. So I go a5, knight c6, queen a4, because now black will never be able to get this b5, b4 idea, because whenever you go b5, you run into the classic glitch move of end peasant with pawn takes pawn. So we get knight d7. I play h4 here, rook b8, bishop h3, and now we get the move b5. Actually, I guess the board registered it wrong during the game. b5 was played even though the live relay apparently is b6, which is a little bit disappointing because b5 was what was played. But of course, I took the pawn with end peasant anyway. Now, I was a little bit annoyed at myself when I played the move bishop h3. I thought I should have played this move g5 here to maybe go f5 or h5 because the bishop on h3 simply is a little bit misplaced. We get b5, I play on peasant, takes, rook to a2, rook b8, rook e2, guarding the pawn, and now we get the move d5. Here I play e5, I have to be very careful because the pawn on f4 is under attack, and now we get the move d4. Here I play bishop g2, and this is exactly why I was unhappy with the bishop h3 move, because I have to waste a tempo since the bishop is simply not doing anything on this diagonal. So I go back, we get takes, takes, rook to b1, and now I play the move rook e1. We get knight b6, queen c2, takes, and here we have the move a5 being played. Now you might be thinking, wait, there's a free juicer, capture the pawn. But if I were to take the pawn on c5, black has this move knight takes e5, the queen attacks the bishop. If I take, it's check on the king, and then I lose the pawn and the game. So I go rook b2. We get bishop to f8, guarding the pawn, and now I play queen b1. We get knight to d5. I trade everything off, and here I play the move knight c2. Now, you will notice the computer does not like white's position here, but I actually thought it should be relatively defensible because his pawn on a5 is going nowhere. If black goes to a4, the pawn still can't get to a3 because I take, and I also have these menacing pawns in the center. So I am a little bit surprised to see the computer say that black is so much better here because I actually thought I was completely fine at this point in the game. So we get knight d7. I go king f1, we get knight b6, and now I go king to e2, trying to bring my king closer to stop this pass pawn on the a file. We get to move bishop e7, and this is really the big mistake of the game. Now, the computer says after king to g7, white is not really worse here after knight to a3, but black should have no issues, whereas in the game, once we get bishop e7 and I go f5, now it's very tough to play because after takes, if you aren't careful and play a move like king f8, after f6, suddenly the bishop is hemmed in here, you have to drop back, and then you lose the pawn and the game. So, here, Erdos plays move f6 is simply a bad move because after e6, I get this protected pass pawn, and already here I had a good feeling that I was going to win the game. We get to move bishop d6, I go knight to a3, and now my knight is jumping to b5 to put pressure on both the bishop and the pawn. Erdos plays king f8, I go knight b5, and now we get a huge error with king to e7. Now, it's worth pointing out that there are many games played every day and the players do get tired, but still this is a mistake that was rather shocking to see because after king to e7, I can simply trade, and now I sack the bishop with bishop takes pawn on c5 here, and Erdos simply resigns because after takes, I push my p to e7, I promote to a queen, and I win the game. So, 2 out of 2. My team wins again, and now we are going to move to my third game of the day where I'm playing with the black pieces against Frederik Svane from Germany. So, 2 out of 2, another big match for my team. We're in the running to potentially get the medals, and the game starts out with the move e4. I play e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, and once again, I go for the classic Berlin defense like I did earlier in this tournament. Now, the main reason I choose to play this is that from my view of watching the match progress, our team is very strong, but the big strength we have is when we get the white piece with a top 10, top 20 type player, we should be able to beat our opponents. So, I choose to remain solid once again. We got d3, and now I play the move knight to e7. Now, at first glance, this looks like a terrible, terrible move, because after white takes the pawn, you're thinking free pawn, you're losing, right? Well, not so fast, because I have c6 here attacking the bishop, and when the bishop moves away, there's queen to a5 checking the king and attacking the knight and creating the very classic 90-degree right triangle. White blocks, you take the horse, and suddenly I have an extra knight, and I'm going to win the game. So that is why Svane plays knight c3, I go c6, bishop c4, and now I play the move knight g6. Guarding the pawn on e5. Here we get bishop b3, I play d6, and now we get the move d4, and I play the move bishop g4. Now, I already was a little bit unsure of what exactly was going on. Computer likes bishop b4 a little bit more than d6, opening up the diagonal, but I thought my position should be fine. So we get d4 here. I actually expected either knight to g5 or h3 to stop bishop g4, but once d4 is on the board, I thought let's go for it with bishop g4, pinning this knight on f3. Here Svane takes, I take back, and now we get to move pawn to h3. I go bishop to h5, we get bishop to e3, and now I take and play the move knight d7. Now, it was very clear to me from the reaction on my opponent's face here, they thought initially he'd made a huge blunder, and I think that I also thought this was a blunder initially, so I play a move here that I don't think was correct. What I should have played here is probably just bishop e7, and after rook to g1, I simply castle here because white has this big weakness on f3 that's always under pressure, and I'm free to start pushing my p on the queen side to attack this bishop. So, instead I go knight d7. Now, I thought initially this was a blunder, but Svane finds the move bishop c4. Very important move here, because if white goes queen e2, for example, after knight to e5, it's pretty much game over. White is going to have serious problems with the queen and the rooks, and everything is going to fall apart. So, he plays the move bishop to c4 here. Now, after bishop c4, I go b5, bishop e2, b4, knight b1, and now I play the move bishop e7. We get knight to d2, I castle, and here we get f4, I trade, and now I play the move queen a5. Now this move is simply based on a pure miscalculation. I think at this point of the day I was getting a little bit tired already, so I thought that this simply stopped white from castling because I could take the pawn. Logical, right? Well, the problem is when knight c4 is played here, as I realized in the situation, if I play queen to a6, white can temporarily sack a pony with knight takes pawn, because after the trade and bishop d6, there's rook h d1, and suddenly I will lose either the bishop or the knight, and I'm almost certainly going to lose the game. So, I play queen c7 back after a long think. Now Svane is able to castle here as the pawn is not under attack. But I told myself that even though I thought I was a little bit worse here, there are going to be chances later on. So I play knight b6. We get rook g1, and now I play the move d5, knight e5, and here I go for g6. Now you'll notice that I'm moving very, very quickly, and this was sort of my strategy, as I felt that I should try to play quickly to put pressure on my opponent's clock in this situation, because with the opposite side castling here, white is the one that has to come up with an attack. I have very obvious moves like bishop to f6, rook to e8, pawn takes pawn. So because my moves are reactionary in this situation, since it's not a classical game, I want to move quickly. So we get h4. Now I play bishop to d6, and here Svane plays move h5. Now this is a mistake, but it's very hard to fault my German opponent, because at this point with the clock ticking down, if you don't find one very, very critical move here, this position is still very unclear. Now the important move here is knight g4, bishop takes f4, and there is the beautiful distraction, pawn to e5 here, stopping the connection of the queen and the bishop. And if I take the pawn after bishop takes knight here, I probably take and take, but after queen to e5, I'm going to have to trade or else my king is going to get checkmated on this diagonal here. So when I trade, I'm simply going to lose the endgame. Additionally, if I were to go bishop takes e3, after queen e3 and knight d7, h5, white is massively attacking here on the king's side. If I'm not careful, I could even get lolly-mated, something like, whoops, I went back, sorry about that, you guys, something like queen b6 and queen to h6, and suddenly there's a lolly checkmate, and it's GG as well. So, if Svane had found knight g4, I probably would have gone on to lose the game, but it's a tough move to find, and when Svane spends 2.5 minutes to play h5, now I'm able to take the knight, take the pawn, and at this point, white is down a pawn, but it's still not clear-cut. However, I had a very good feeling I would win, because when you look at the time situation, I am up 5 minutes. So we get f3. I take f4, queen to e6, we get king b1, and now I play the move rook d8. We get rook to f1, I play rook d5, very important move as well, by the way, because if I play knight c4, after f5, suddenly with these two pawns and the two towers on the f and g files, white is very much back in the game. So I play rook to d5 to stop f5, we get rook h1 here, played with 18 seconds left on the clock, and now I spend 5 minutes before playing this move, rook to d8. Now, I was very proud of myself after the game when I played this, because initially, for the first 60 to 120 seconds, first 1 to 2 minutes, I desperately wanted to go knight to c4 here, but I thought after queen takes, knight, rook to d1, takes, and the move f5 here, I was not actually sure if I'm better in this position, because white somehow still has an attack, and I still have these serious dark square weaknesses around my king, and so I spent a lot of time trying to make this work, and ultimately I rejected it because I was not sure that I was even better in this variation. So I spent a lot of time before playing rook d8. I also considered rook to a5, b3, and knight d5, but after bishop d4, knight c3, takes, and queen to e3, I wasn't sure what's going on here, because after moves like rook e8, I thought white could take, and then play something like h6 to go for the lolly mate again. Apparently this is winning because with this passed pawn and the rook targeting after h6, I guess queen f6, queen e3, and a5. Black still retains an extra pawn and should win, but I was simply not convinced. So I spent a lot of time and then ultimately played rook f d8, putting my double stack on the open lane. We get bishop c1, and now I play the move e3. Now this is not a move that I wanted to play, but because I had spent so much time earlier, I had to start going quicker. So I play e3. We get rook to f3, and now I sack the rook with rook to d2, going for the classic memes, because if white were to take the rook after takes, queen to d1, not takes, by the way, this would run into another meme, the classic ice skater checkmate of the white king with no squares available. And after white goes queen d1, I can play knight to c4 here with ideas like queen to f6 or queen to e4, and with the rook behind this passed pawn, white's pieces are simply too passive. So we get queen takes pawn, I play rook d1, we get the trade, and now we're in an endgame where I'm up 35 seconds on the clock with no danger whatsoever, there's no attack, and I should be able to win. We get rook to f1, takes, f5, and now I play the move king f7. Here we get b3, and I play the move knight d5, and now we get king to b2, and here I finally play this move e5. Now the computer is screaming for e5 even on this turn, but after rook to h1 attacking the pawn, apparently after knight d5 takes, knight c3, king b2, and rook d1, this is winning for black, but without knowing this is winning, it's very hard to play such a variation. So I go knight d5. We get king b2, e5, now I have the wide peepos, we have rook h1, knight f6, bishop g5, and here I play the move a5. Now the reason I play this move a5 is that I understand there is going to be a trade of the bishop for the knight, so as long as I can keep this queenside intact, I will simply have a free pass with this pawn going up the board, because the rook also cuts off the king from ever getting back over through this d file. So we get a3. I play rook g8, takes, rook h5, and now I play the move rook to g1. Now this might not be the only way to win, but I think this is really a classic move here, because if I were to play e4, white can try to start running with the king back around. Apparently I still have rook d8 to keep the king cut and win the game, but when I go rook g1, now the white king simply cannot get into the action at all. So we get rook h4, I play c5, we get rook takes pawn, and now I start pushing my p with e4 here, because this white king just cannot get over to stop my p. So we get rook to h8, I take, we get rook f8, king e5, check, king f4, check, king g3, check, king f2, check, king e2, and now we get the move rook f5. Now white has to try and do something here, because if I just keep pushing this pawn up the board, this will be a very basic win. So we get the move rook f5. I play e3, we get takes, king f3, check, king e4, rook f8, and now I push the pawn to e2. We got check, king f3, check, king e3, check. By the way, not king g4 here, because after rook g8, I would lose the rook, stopping the pawn from queening, and then I would lose the game. So I go king e3, we get check, king f2, check, king e1, and now we get the move c3. Now c3 is a last-ditch effort here for my opponent to try to keep the game going, because if white plays a move like rook f7, now after rook f1, rook e7, king f2, I'm free to start running back with my king. I do the ziggy-zaggy, the rook guards the queening square, and once I queen and white takes, I simply have an extra rook, and it's over immediately. So we get c3. Now I play the move rook to f1 here. This is maybe not the only way to win. The most important thing to remember is to not trade the pawns. Apparently this is also winning, by the way, after king d1. So I guess if white checks, there's king c1, and after rook e8, queen takes, b4. I guess, you have rook e4, b5, rook h4, and now you win the game because the king can't cross this fourth rank here. So this would have been winning as well, but with limited time, you don't ever want to go into this endgame. That's why I play rook f1, we get rook e8, king to f2. Of course, white takes, I queen, takes, and now white tries to run up the board in a hurry with the king and the pawns. Now in this position, I simply go king e3, b5, king to e4, and here Frederik Svane resigns because after king c4, I will check the king away, and my king is simply getting back way too quickly. Even king d6 and rook b1 here, for example, this would be a very easy win of the pawn. There's just no way for white to continue the game here because my king and rook are simply going to stop these double pawns on the b file. So I get a third win in a row, and our team wins once again. Now, in the fourth and final round of the day, I would play former FIDE world champion Rustam Kasimdzhanov. It would be a very uneventful game ending in a draw. So I scored 3.5 points out of 4 on the day. The great tragedy is that my team, after holding it together, having so many close matches and winning, unfortunately, Alireza Firouzja would make a terrible blunder in his game, and we would lose our final match by a score of 3.5 to 2.5, which means that we are not going to finish in the top 3 in the rapid portion of this event. So a little bit of a tragedy in the final round, but for myself, I think I played relatively well. It could have been a little bit better, but it is rapid. Anything can happen. And at the end of the day, I have a very good score. I believe that I win something like 5 games with, I think, 5 draws, if I'm not mistaken. So I have a very, very good overall result. No losses either. And I'm pretty pleased with how things transpire. So that is going to do it for the rapid portion of this FIDE World Rapid and Blitz team event here in London. Tomorrow the Blitz will start. It's a 2-day event. Hopefully our team is able to put it together and win. I think we have great chance with Maxime, myself, Alireza, and many great Blitz specialists. So I'm very optimistic, but that's going to do it for the rapid portion of this event. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from day number 3 of the the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Team Championship. Sorry, you guys got a little bit tongue-tied. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with a recap after the Blitz portion. I hope to see all of you guys here in London, in and around the Hammersmith Station in the coming days before I return to America. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your evening. Cheers, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.